Do you want to hear a huge mistake that I made when I first started teaching? Very embarrassing. We will look at this in today's episode and much more because I'm actually sharing something a little bit different today. The topic of today's episode will be lessons that I have learnt from teaching English. So basically things that I've learnt from teaching and things that the students have taught me. Because of course, as a teacher, learning goes both ways. The teacher is also learning all the time, and that's one of the great things about being a teacher. You may be able to tell that I actually have a little bit of a cold today. I'm not feeling that well, so I have enough energy to do this intro, but I don't sadly have enough energy to make a full episode today. So because of that, I thought it would be a good idea to repost a private episode. And this is something that the majority of you will have never heard before. So hopefully you're excited to hear this one. If you don't know, I also have a private version of the podcast. At the moment, we have over 120 episodes that are not available to the public. And these are hosted on the Level Up English members website. As always, there's a link in the podcast description below if you want to find out more. But I thought it might be nice to give a preview of this one today. So this is the second private podcast I ever made. It was recorded a few years ago, but I think it's still quite relevant today where I'm talking about some things that I have learned from my teaching experiences, both good and bad, about cultures, about learning, about languages, and behavior maybe as well. I think it's quite an interesting one, and I think you might enjoy hearing my thoughts on this. And just to explain a little bit more about the private podcast, my main goal in the episodes are basically to speak naturally. In these public podcasts, I do try to speak clearly as much as I can. I don't really slow down my speech that much, but I try to speak clearly. However, in the private episodes, I try to speak kind of like how it would be if I was talking to a friend. I want to speak naturally, so that might be more mumbling. It might be more, hesitating, all this kind of stuff. I don't edit the episodes, which also makes it sound much more natural, I suppose. Sometimes I might even just take a pause to cough or clear my throat, which normally would get edited out of the normal episodes. But basically, I try to make it as casual and natural as I can. So you may find it harder to understand than a regular episode. So just keep that in mind. If you do find it harder to catch every word, that could be the reason today. I think a lot of students find it a nice challenge to follow along with these private podcasts. And of course, if you do find it really hard, you might benefit from the transcripts as well. Transcripts are available for every public episode on the members' website. So this is where you can hear what I'm saying and you can follow the text that highlights the words as I'm saying them. It's a really, really good way to train your listening and reading as well. And also I should mention the private podcast is audio only. So in a minute, we'll be switching over to audio. So no more video for this section. But I hope you enjoy this one. Let me know your feedback. Let me know what you think. But yeah, I guess now we can switch over to Michael a few years ago and hear what he has to say. I hope it's good. Hello, private podcast listeners. Michael here. Welcome to English learners all around the world. Thank you, by the way, for checking out episode 2 of the Level Up English private podcast. I want to talk today about lessons from 5 years of teaching English. So we're coming into 2022. I started teaching online at the end of 2016. It's been about 5 years then. And I feel like I've learned a lot over that time. I've grown as a person. I've learned a lot about people, cultures, and language learning. So, I like to get a bit more personal on these private episodes. So some things I'm going to say I thought maybe are not well suited for the main podcast, but we'll see. I don't have a super clear plan of what I'm going to say yet. But yeah, let's get right into it. Let's talk about some lessons I've learnt. And yeah, I hope some of them are useful for you because I'm going to be talking about some language learning things as well that might
be reassuring to you. One of them that I've learnt that I really do think is so great to hear, so great to realize, is that people all over the world are basically the same, right? We have cultural differences, we have language differences, we look different, we sound different, but on the inside, we're all the same. We all want the same things. And this is, we want to be happy, we want to be healthy, we want to have, we wish our loved ones to be healthy too. This kind of stuff. We maybe want some money, but that money is going to bring us comfort and health. So I think health and happiness for us and those around us, these are the key things that we all want, right? And we're all looking to improve our life situation in some way. I love this realization because I've had students from every continent, apart from Antarctica. I've had students from the Middle East. I've had India, China, Brazil, Argentina, all over Europe, Africa too, like Nigeria and Egypt, all these places. People vary greatly in their religion, their beliefs, things like that. But deep down, people all want the same things. And, all of my students are nice. I've never had a student who was rude and grumpy. They're always friendly and kind and lovely people. So I feel like I've learned that people are generally the same. Wherever you are in the world, people are the same. And this also goes with like countries like Syria, for example. For many people, I'll speak for my country in the UK. If you talk about Syria, they only know about things in the news. They think, ooh, dangerous, war, horrible things, scary people. And it's really a shame because, of course, the war and everything is terrible, and that's a horrible thing in itself. But people often don't think about the individual people there. And I have had Syrian students who, many of them are living in other countries now, like Egypt or Saudi Arabia. And they're so friendly, they're so kind. They want the best for everyone. They're such nice people there. And it's just so amazing to see this side of the culture that you don't see on the news, So, I don't know. That's just a nice thing that I've noticed. Somewhat contrary to that, on the other hand, cultural differences do exist. So another lesson I've learned is not to take things personally. One example of this is simply some cultures smile a lot less. I think Western cultures, I don't know what that means, but let's say English-speaking countries, for the most part, are quite smiley, right? If I see someone on the street, I might smile at them, and it's quite a nice thing to do. In many countries, maybe even most countries, I don't know, it seems like many, smiling is not so normal. You shouldn't smile at strangers. It's a bit creepy or suspicious. It's not really done. People will think you're a weirdo, right? And I've had lessons where people just don't smile. And at the beginning, I was thinking, oh no, like they're really unhappy. They don't like me. But then they'll express their gratitude in other ways, and they'll send me a nice message or something. Another example is some cultures are very direct. So, I'm not going to mention any specific places, but some cultures will just say to me, like, Michael, what happened to your hair? You look way better when you had more hair. What happened to you? Or I had one person before saying, Michael, your profile picture on your website looks really ugly. You should find a better one and you'll get more students. And at first I was kind of offended, like, what? You're saying I'm ugly? But then when I got to know them and know more about that culture, I realized it wasn't rude. They were actually trying to be helpful and nice. They wanted me to get more students. They wanted me to look nicer in the photo. And I guess that in that comment specifically, they kind of were suggesting I don't look as bad in real life as I do in that photo, right? But yeah, I think that's another important lesson to learn, is that don't take things personally. Give people the benefit of the doubt. If you think someone is trying to offend you, have a second thought and think, maybe there's just a cultural difference here. Maybe they actually have the best of intentions. So that's a nice lesson, I would say. In terms of language learning, one lesson I've learned is that everyone struggles with the same things. We all struggle with the same things. So I see common patterns in language problems because I always ask my students the same question. Every time we have a lesson, for 5 years, I've had over 600 students in those 5 years. Some have stuck around, some haven't. That's fine. But I always ask the same question, which is, what do you struggle with most in English? And people always say the same stuff. Some differences, like, I think depending on where you're from, some of them I know why, some of them I don't know why. Like, for example, in Brazil, people really struggle with the ED pronunciation. So let's say invited, which is fine, but rather than saying walked, I walked to the shop, they might say I walked. That's a common problem in Brazil, I've heard. Italians will have problems with vowels at the end of words because of their language. So rather than saying cat, they'll say katta, dogga. Yeah. Japanese have problems with the L and the R sound because they don't really exist in the Japanese language. So there are things that are specific to each country that many people have problems with. And that's good to know as a teacher. But I would say most things are universal. So one common theme is remembering grammar in conversation. Almost everyone says to me, Michael, I can write the grammar. I know all the grammar rules, but when it comes to conversation, I just don't remember. I don't remember how to use them. So that's a common one. By the way, my advice for that one very quickly is stop studying the grammar. It sounds super counterintuitive. It sounds like it doesn't make any sense. But if you are thinking about the grammar too much, it will be impossible to talk. It's kind of like if you're playing a musical instrument or giving a speech in front of people. If you think about what you're doing, it becomes much, much harder to do it. If you have to think about what keys on the piano to press, you won't be playing very well. What you have to do is you have to get into the moment. You have to feel the music, feel what sounds good to you, what's natural, and it will flow more naturally. And it's the same with language, I believe. Practice conversation, practice listening, practice speaking, and say what sounds right. Don't worry about the grammar. You can study the grammar later if you want to, but when you're talking, just say what sounds right. That's my advice. Another problem people have is confidence. They're too shy. That is universal. Everyone says that around the world. Simply just get out of your comfort zone, Take baby steps to leave your comfort zone and do things that scare you. Another one is a lack of practice. This is difficult because you don't have anyone to practice with, but you can find language partners and teachers and listen to podcasts and talk to yourself, write diaries. There are things you can do, but lack of practice is a common one too. Okay, so my next lesson that I've been learning a bit more recently, which is I think it's a really interesting psychological one. It's not so much related to language learning, but this is the idea that if you increase the value you give to people, or you increase how much you offer people, that will become normal and it will be expected. For example, I'll give you a practical example. On the podcast transcripts, I used to only do PDFs, which is just a document you can view and you have to find where you are on the page. More recently, I started adding live transcripts, which is where it highlights the word as you are reading, as you're listening. So it's much easier to follow the transcript while you're listening. I thought this would be a great way to add more value to you guys, and you guys can learn a bit more easily. But as soon as I started doing that, I got so many complaints from people by email, like, why haven't you done all of them with live transcripts? I want all of them to be live and things like that. And people kind of expected this to be the standard. And it's kind of funny because I was technically I was giving more value, I was doing more, but if I hadn't done that, I would have got fewer complaints. So if I didn't do anything, no one would complain. But I started doing more and then people complained, right? So that was a really weird thing. I am still trying, by the way, to update every episode, but it does take some time. Another example with my lessons, every year I like to think about my lessons and what I could do better. So these days, I try to give very detailed lesson notes for my students after every class. And I never used to do that, and people never asked for it. People never cared. But as soon as I started doing it, if one day I forgot to do it, my students would get very, not upset, but they'd be like, hey, where are the notes today? Give me the notes. They would expect it. So when you increase what you offer, that becomes expected. And then you have to do more to give more value. But that's a funny one. I kind of like that one, and I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, though. My next realization from my experience is that language in schools are bad all over the world. It doesn't seem to matter what country you're in, but the way they teach languages in school is pretty bad, pretty terrible. I wonder if there's any exceptions. This is kind of an opinion as well, but all of my students seem to say this. And this is the reason, one of the reasons I decided to teach online is because I just didn't like the way languages are taught in schools. I found it really boring. There's no practice. It's just grammar and words. It's not fun, right? So I wanted to make language learning fun. Hopefully that will change in the future and language in schools will get better. But yeah, that's a shame. Another thing I've learned is I think this is good advice for those of you working from home. I know a lot of us are doing that more these days, thanks to the pandemic. For better or worse, some people like it, some people don't. I love working from home. I think it's amazing. But there are difficulties. So my lesson is find people who can help lift your boat. This comes from the phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats. So what that means is if one thing is helping you grow, it will help everyone grow as well. The tide is the ocean going up and down each day. So, for example, I work alone for the most part. I sit at home, I'm in the room on my own all day. It can get quite lonely, right? But I have made an effort to connect with other teachers from around the world. So I talk to people from all over the world who are teaching English. I have collaborated with people. I've done shared podcasts. I meet people. I work with people on different business projects, all this kind of stuff. And it just makes you feel less alone. So don't try things alone. Try to work with other people, even if it feels like it's more effort, but you can help each other grow and you'll just be happier, right? So how could that apply to your life? Maybe have a think about that. One thing I've learned as a teacher, by the way, this list isn't in any particular order. It's a bit messy, just as I thought of them. But one thing I've learned as a teacher is to be flexible and open to what the student wants. In other words, don't overplan. I have some really cringy and kind of embarrassing memories of my first lessons in 2016, where I would plan a really detailed lesson about a particular grammar point. And the student, well, I don't even know what they wanted. I didn't really take into account what they wanted. I had a very kind of typical school mindset of, I'm the teacher, I'm going to teach you, and you're going to learn. And a lot of those early students, they didn't stick around. I don't blame them because I didn't give them the choice. I didn't listen to them. I also had a Japanese teacher like this as well. I don't want to complain too much about teachers I've had, but I'm sure she's great now. But I once had a teacher, a trial lesson where, maybe it was Chinese. I think it was Chinese where the teacher had a plan. She kind of taught me everything. She never asked me about my goals in Chinese. To me, that's a big red flag because I've learned over the years that it's really important to be open. So sometimes I will have a plan for our lesson in my one-to-one lessons, because, maybe based on a previous lesson, I think, okay, this student struggles with this, this pronunciation thing. So we can practice this today. I think they will really appreciate it. But in the lesson, the student seems so happy to talk and tell me about things, ask me questions, and I have to just kind of be open to that. And if I say, okay, I'm going to interrupt you and we're going to do my plan now, they're not going to be happy, right? So I have to be really open and go with the flow and do what they want. Because I have to remember, at the end of the day, it is their lesson. Students often say my lesson, like they often say Michael's lesson. But I have to kind of remind them, it's not my lesson, it's your lesson. So, some students will they say, I want to just talk about my week for the whole hour, and that's what I want. And then sometimes it turns into more of like a therapy session, which I always enjoy. But basically, they're telling me about their problems and their worries, and I listen. It's good speaking practice for them, and probably it helps them feel better about problems too. So I love those lessons too. And another one which I have learnt and still learning is people focus mostly on themselves. They don't care about you, basically. And I think this is a good thing. So for example, sometimes I will have a lesson, and at the end of the lesson, I'll think, oh no, I wasn't happy with that lesson. I think my teaching was really bad. I didn't seem that happy and cheerful. I think I didn't think I did a good job. But then the student, I realise, they have no idea. They think I did fine. But in the student's head, they're thinking, oh no, I spoke so badly. My English was terrible. Michael really probably doesn't like me anymore. So generally, you think badly about yourself, not about other people. So I don't know, I just think that's a good lesson to learn in language learning and in life, right? People don't care about you. People don't care about your mistakes. People don't care how you act. They're more concerned about themselves. I think that can be a really good thing to remember, and yeah, I don't know. Think about it. How could it be useful for you? Oh, a really good thing I've learned as a teacher is attitude. Attitude is the most important thing, in my opinion. For example, in the past, I have had an amazing lesson plan. I've spent hours planning a perfect lesson with PowerPoints and animations and all this stuff. I think it's amazing. But if I'm in a bad mood, the lesson will be bad, right? The opposite case is I don't have any plan. Some students, I feel like, okay, they don't need a plan because of their desire to learn, their goals. So I don't have a plan. And if I'm in a good mood and I am attentive and focused and flexible to them, the lesson can be amazing. And the same goes for the learner, I think, as well. So this is good advice, I would say. Your attitude will entirely determine how well the lesson goes and how well anything goes. Attitude is really everything. So the best plan cannot save you from a bad mood, basically. So be positive, optimistic, have a good attitude, and you will go far. Couple more points. One is don't take things personally. I remember when I first started teaching, I was so sad when a student cancelled or when a student didn't book a lesson for a few weeks, and I would feel like, oh, what did I do? Oh, maybe I gave them a bad lesson. They hate me. What did I do? But over the years, I've learnt that almost all students will not book a lesson, not because of me, but because of their situation. Maybe it's a financial situation. Maybe they get busy. Maybe they just forget to study English. It's rarely about me. If it is about me, then I've also learnt to accept that's fine. Because if every student likes me, I'm being too much of a people pleaser, That means I'm not having any personality. I want to be someone who not everyone likes, right? Because that means I'm more individual, I'm more unique, I'm being myself. So I think it's the same for making friends, right? If everyone likes you, there's a chance that you're not being who you really are. You should be more true to yourself and express what you really like. So don't take things personally. And yeah, maybe I'll just finish on one more now. Is one thing I've learned is to know my worth. Know what I'm worth. This probably relates to time and money, right? So when I first started teaching, I had a very low price, which I think is normal because you're getting experience. A student gets a low price. In exchange, you get to practice your teaching skills. And maybe that applies to other businesses too. But over the years, I've kind of had to be very honest. It's very uncomfortable charging people money for something. I've always felt uncomfortable with that. Like whenever people talk about money in the lesson, I get very uncomfortable. Maybe it's part of my British, attitude, my British culture, but I don't like charging people money. If someone says, "How much are your lessons?" I instantly feel awkward, and I don't want to tell them. I don't want to talk about money because I just feel like, who am I to charge you money? What if you don't learn from me? But over the years, I've been trying to know my worth, and I think about it and I think how much time and effort I put into lessons, how much I want you to succeed, how much I'm going to support you as a teacher and as a student to help you grow and improve. And yeah, I think you have to be confident with your pricing. Whatever business you have, I think you have to feel confident with it and try to be comfortable. Know what you're worth, know how much time you put into things, and know that you can give that value back to the student. So that's something I'm trying to get to. And yeah, it also comes with free time. So I've had many people in the past ask me for favors. Can you answer my homework for me? I can't pay you, but I want you to do my homework. In the beginning, I would be like, yes, I want to make everyone happy. I want to please everyone. But these days, I'm much more strict, and I'll say, I cannot do that, I'm afraid. I cannot help you with your homework. Mainly for the same reason that you wouldn't go into the hairdressers and say, can you cut my hair for free? Or you wouldn't go to a shop, can you give me some food for free? I can't pay, unfortunately. I think it's important to respect people's work. So, yeah, I don't say yes to these free jobs anymore. A few reasons why, partly because it's a little bit insulting, right? To me, it kind of sounds like, I don't think you're worth paying for, therefore I'm going to ask for free. I think that's very rude, to be honest. And also, personally, if I spend 10 minutes answering your homework for you, first of all, what else could I do in that 10 minutes? In that 10 minutes, I could probably do something much more valuable to me and to other people. I could do something that's going to really help a lot of people. Perhaps, possibly, right? Additionally, if I'm charging people money for my lessons, but then I'm giving people free help to answer their homework, then it's kind of insulting to the people who pay. Because it's not fair, right? Because they're paying when I'm doing other stuff for free too. So I think it just doesn't make sense at all. So know what you're worth, value your time and your price, right? This goes for whether you have a business or not. But yes, that is my advice. And those are my lessons. I probably could go on, but I've gone on long enough today. What did you think of that? Any that you relate to? Any that you agree with? Hope you enjoyed this topic. It's been on my mind for a while, so I'm glad to get it off my chest. So there are my lessons from 5 years of teaching English online. Thank you for listening once again, and I'll see you for the next episode. See you then. Goodbye. You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. and I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.